Alright guys, so today we're going to be doing a macrame wall hanger. You can see I have a wooden dowel, a string hanging up on the top and holding on to both sides here. You really use just about anything to hang this up. I just use the same basic cord that's going to be coming in your bags. You can also see that I have 6 strings on here, 2, 2, and 2 on each side. You're going to make sure that you want to keep these guys together, and we'll go ahead and get started. So I'm going to show you guys how to do the basic knot. We're going to start in the middle. It's easier to work your way from the inside out rather than trying to start in these outside guys and weave them in later. So we'll go ahead and start getting on this. So I'm going to start with these 2 in the middle. We're going to have 1 from each string here. So if you see I pull this in the middle, both of these kind of come up, so you make sure that you have one side of each string for the middle section here. And it's important to keep these 2 together. The first one's always going to be the hardest, but you're going to take either your right or your left. I'm going to start with my right. You can follow along with this one so you can kind of see. I'm going to put my right behind these 2 and over this one, so you can kind of see my hands here. Now I'm going to take this one over here, off to the left, over the middle 2, and through the one on the right. Now you can see it's going to look like these 2 in the middle are just kind of weaved in here. And we're going to go ahead and tighten. Now, if you look at these top 2 pretty closely here, you can see that one is kind of hanging out a little bit further than the other. And so if you look at this a little bit closer, one's coming out from the top and the other one's coming from the back. Now, that's important to kind of notice. This will kind of determine your pattern here. I'm going to do one that's just straight down, so we're going to want to alternate. So this one went over the top the last time. This time, this one will. Or vice versa. Sorry about that. I want to keep a good hand on these middle 2 here. And we'll just go ahead and keep going with that. Now, if you want to add these beads or anything onto this, now would be the time. We're going to go ahead and stick them right on these center 2 cords. So any sort of beads works for this. I'm just going to use the simple little plastic ones you can get at Michael's, or they will be in your bag. But any beads will work for this as long as it fits on the string. So we'll start with 1, and then we'll just continue as if that bead wasn't even there to begin with. So same motion, just kind of ignore it, but leave it in between your knot. So when you tie this up, it'll secure that bead right in place there. So there is our basic knots here. And so now we're going to kind of start on the same 2 on the other side. Depending on how far apart you have these, it's really going to determine how long this connection is going to be. I'm going to keep mine fairly spread apart. We're going to start with the same thing. So take each individual string, pull them off to the sides, and you're going to choose your 2 middle ones. And so we're going to start 1. So we're going to start with our right on the underneath, like this. See that there? And over the left, and then we're going to grab the left, go over that top and through the loop. Now, we started with the right on the bottom. We're going to stay with the right on the bottom this entire time so that we can create a different pattern. So I'm going to keep putting my right underneath, my left on top. And what it's going to do is, instead of going flat down like this, it's going to spiral. And so at one point it's going to kind of flip all the way over. And so we'll just keep going right underneath when it does flip over. And it should just continue your spiral. If it starts to feel like it's flattening out, you can always undo these knots too. So you can see the flat part of this middle here and how this one off to the right kind of starts to spiral. I'm going to speed the video up a little bit just so that we can kind of see how these all go together. I'm going to do the exact same thing on this side as well. And then we'll tune back in when I do the connection between the two. All right, guys, so now that I have all three of these kind of at a point where I can start to kind of tie them together like this, we can go ahead and do that. So I'm going to start with one side and then we'll work on the other. So I'll go from left to right. So we're going to take all of these strings here and we're really going to attach the two that are closest together. These are going to now be our new middle pieces. We're going to take, we can kind of push this off to the side here. We're not going to use that at the moment. Same thing with these guys. So we're going to end up with 4 strings, just like we have been working on individually. This can be a little bit tricky, but we're going to start with these two in the middle, and we're just going to do the same thing. So I'm going to put one over and under, the other one over and under here. So that way, when this does end up tying together, we'll kind of hook these guys there. So same knots, just different string. The first one is usually the hardest just because everything is kind of loose at the moment and it hasn't really been locked in there. But I promise once you start to get through all of this, it will get easier. So as you can see here, it's now working out the same way that it did. All right, and so we're gonna do the same thing. You know, I'll leave this on this side. We're gonna do the same thing on the other. So I'm gonna take the 2 closest ones, one from the middle, one from the outside. We're just gonna pull these over. I'll move these 2 over the top over here. So put these 2 outside ones together. You're gonna see your knots kind of start to twist around. It's okay to kind of adjust your hands on where it holds. It's gonna use up the string pretty fast. And if you feel like you're running out of string and you need to kind of use up the rest of it, don't be afraid to really just switch your hands here so that way you can really get the most out of the string that you've got. Now the tighter you pull this one that's really your base, the easier this is going to be to kind of speed through. If you have 2 loose ends, it's going to wobble a lot and it's going to be really hard to really see your knots. All right, so now these 2 are pretty much the same length here in the middle. What we can do is we can go ahead and attach those together, making an extra thick one. So what I'm going to do is I'm actually going to pick my 2 longest strings here, one from each side on this. And so mainly because your outside strings will end up using the most amount of material. And so we really want to make sure that we can kind of use up what we can. And now that's on this side. All right, it's these two. So instead of deciding that we're just going to put 2 in the middle, we're going to end up kind of putting the rest of them together and having 2 on the outside. So there, on mine, there will be 6 in the middle. We're just going to go ahead and loop these in. This one will make these extra thick, so it can just have a little bit different of a design. Now, again, any of these can be used in different orders, depending on, you know, personal preference, what it is that you'd like. Any of these knots end up working. Feel free to look online too. There are a lot of great YouTube tutorials on this as well. So don't be afraid to look up other knots. And like I said, if you end up not liking something, you can always just redo it. So really, don't be afraid to experiment. I'm going to end up doing a spiral to kind of tie this all off together. So remember, we're all going in the same direction, so my right is going to be underneath. Now this is starting to flip around, so you still want to keep your right underneath, but go ahead and flip it. It'll be fine. I am starting to run out of string on this side, so I will end up switching over to the 2 longest ones again. So I'm just going to kind of pull these guys out of here and move the rest of the outside. We'll just continue going. Actually, I want to pull these tight so you can kind of grab everything that was at one point on the outside. I really want to get that in there. And so I think I'm at a good stopping point. We could do what we did with these guys, where we just kind of wrap it up. I think it might be a little bit too thick for that. So what we want to do is we want to make sure that we tie these outer 2. I'm just going to really just do 2 little loop-de-loops. You can really tie this off as in any way that you'd like. But from here, I'm going to do it in the back too, so that way we're not really looking at that when we're done. And then, so they're a little off, so what I'm going to do is the exact same thing that we did over here. I'm just going to kind of do one or two of these to hold everything down, so that way it all almost looks like a tassel at the bottom. So I'm holding maybe a couple more. I'm going to hold this flat and just to hold it. I'm going to cut this up. Now, we have our wall hanger